Well, I don't know you, you don't know me, so I thought it would be nice to have just for the start a quick and fun game. So you just stand up if you're in a similar situation. Okay, so first of all, I'm a researcher who spends too much time behind the computer. Okay, great. Most of us agree about it. Yeah. Okay. Oh, there's a seat available there. Yeah, here's a here. Okay, next thing. Well, I have two kids, so I should have called them chaos and entropy, but I wasn't allowed to. But it's basically defines who they are. So anyone else has like these little creatures running around ruining your lives? Yes. I also have a dog, so I can actually call her my well, an emotional support dog because the dog actually needs my emotional support. It's a rescue dog. And I play volleyball, although I'm not very good at it, but I enjoy it anyway. So anyone else, yeah, doing a sport that they're not very good at it. Yeah.
No, then I'll raise my.
Oh, okay. You lower your hand.
I'm very good at
it. So what's the sport then?
Basketball, tennis.
Oh, wow. Yeah, the lastly, I just came back from holiday and I, of course, forgot what I was doing at work. Yes. Yeah. So after coming back from holiday, I always have to make up my mind like, okay, what am I doing? And why am I doing this? So what are actually my research interests? And well, this is the list that I came up and well, I love looking at eco-evolutionary dynamics. Also, I'm very intrigued by movement of animals and by dispersal of seeds by plants. Of course, I'm very interested in emergence and in self-organization. And how do I study all of this? Well, I really, really like to make individual-based models. So that's the second best thing to do, except for doing holidays. Yeah, so I have been doing this actually quite some time now. I started my PhD in 2008. So I've been doing postdocs since 2013. So that's 11 years now. And my PhD was about self-organization in mussel beds, which you know now. And then after my PhD, I moved to Switzerland, where I looked at the seed dispersal of an alpine plant species, a cushion plant that facilitates other plants by just being there by its presence. So I wanted to know whether it also facilitates its own seeds. Well, after my time in Switzerland, I went back to the Netherlands and I did a PhD at Utrecht University, where I looked at the seed dispersal by water well, in streams and rivers in the Netherlands, which was a lot of fun because I could do all the modeling and statistics and stuff, and I would send out the students to actually do the field work. So they would be like until here in the water, and I would be high and dry behind my computer. After being at Utrecht University for some time, I did a postdoc at Biometris, where I looked at the dispersal of, well, not the dispersal, the movement patterns of Maui dolphins. So these Maui dolphins are actually, there are only 63 of them left. So that's quite threatened, severely threatened. And therefore we needed to know where you would be able to find these dolphins, where would they swim around, and what areas would be needed to protect, to have protected, to give this species a bit of a chance. So we found out that the area that they are now not allowing fishing activities because these dolphins swim in the nets, it's actually too small. So they need to expand upon this to actually give the Maui dolphins a chance. So that's basically what I did there. I made an individual-based model of these dolphins. So after being at Biometris for 9 months, it was very short, I went to the Netherlands Institute of Ecology. And there I was studying another animal species, but this time it was geese. Geese foraging on grasslands in Friesland. So the question was, how do we solve the farmer-goose conflict? Because geese are eating all the grass, the farmers are not happy about it, but if you scare them off, then they come back and eat more because, well, they just been flying around. They have burned a lot of energy. So that's basically also my results from my models. That's, well, just don't scare them and they won't eat that much as when you do. Yeah, after my time at the Netherlands Institute of Ecology, I went back to Wageningen University, and there I did some studies on camera trapping data and occupancy analysis, and how the interval length of that you use in occupancy analysis will actually affect the results of that. But now I'm back at Utrecht University, and I'm in this really new group. So we only exist now for 1.5 years, which is quantitative biodiversity dynamics. It's also a very small group, as you can see. And it's very nice because, well, we're just starting up. So I get a lot of things to say. And it's great that you also have these, these short bonds, these tight connections within the group. Yeah, so what am I doing there? Well, I'm actually now looking at the effects of habitat fragmentation on community dynamics. So we all know that habitat loss leads to biodiversity decline. And while we all know that this is happening, still destruction of habitat is going on. It's an ongoing process. And this destruction of habitat mainly follows this complex fractal-like pattern, just because it's the way our infrastructure and the environment interact with each other. So the main question of my research at the moment is, what are the effects of the spatial configuration of habitat destruction on biodiversity, on connectivity, and on community dynamics? So there is still a lot of debate going on. Oh, no, first I'm going to have you have this disentangled for you. So the difference between habitat loss and habitat fragmentation, because people often mix these things up. So habitat loss actually, it relates to the amount of habitat that's present. So you can have a full landscape full of habitat, or you can have a smaller, less habitat, but it's just the amount of habitat. Whereas habitat fragmentation is how you would have the habitats distributed over the environment. So you can have like these clustered sites of habitat, or you can have random habitat destruction, which also leads to this random pattern of habitat patches in your environment. Now, whether one is better than the other, that's the main debate in ecology, and this is called the SLOSS debate. So SLOSS actually stands for single large or several small areas. So should you, if you have a certain amount of habitat destruction going on because you need to do that, then would it be better to have like a single large area that you keep or that you destruct, or several small areas? So some researchers say, okay, it's much better to have several small, because that increases, well, it's not increase, but it is better, you don't lose that much biodiversity by it. Or should you, or others, they actually say, no, you should have one big environment, because if you would put it into small areas, then species would go extinct because they can't live in these small areas. So what's actually happening here is that there are three main drivers of these different views that people have on how habitat fragmentation affects biodiversity, which are well, the species distributions, the static versus dynamic effects, and that there are different spatial skills involved. So first, the effectiveness of the spatial configuration of habitat may depend on the species distributions. So if you would, for instance, have regularly distributed individuals, then you would have survival of the species in case of low fragmentation, whereas you would have extinction here in this case if there is high fragmentation going on. Now, on the other hand, if individuals are very aggregated, then here in the case of low fragmentation, it leads to extinction of the species, whereas here it would result in survival of species. And when you would have a random distribution of individuals, well, then it doesn't really matter. So
when you're assuming that you're putting these circles randomly in the.
Yeah, well, it's a study.
You would do a study would be more precise about.
Yeah, exactly. This is just one example, but this study by May et al. They did all these different configurations, and they found out that this actually holds. But that's only holds when you look at the instantaneous removal of species. So it does not hold when you have dynamics involved. But that's the next thing, which is static versus dynamic effects. So we have to differentiate between static effects, so which is the immediate effects of habitat loss, which is also called geometric effects, by the way, or the dynamic or demographic effects, which are the effects of habitat loss after subcommunities have stabilized. So if you would have, finally, if you would have a fragmented environment and you would have more species that survived in this environment than in the, in the less fragmented situation, yes, that's the word, then it might be that these species actually cannot survive in such a small area and therefore become extinct after a while. So this means that, well, people sometimes look at just the static effects, sometimes at the dynamic effects, and that is why you have this debate going on.
And the dynamic effects are here across multiple generations?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, so the next main driver of the different views is the spatial skills that are involved that people are looking at. So if you would look at the effects of fragmentation on biodiversity at the meta-community level, you might miss what is going on the smaller scales. Whereas if you would look at the sub-community level, then you might miss the whole picture of what is going on at the meta-community level. Yeah.
What would be meta-community and sub-community?
So the sub-communities are the smaller parts of the meta-community. So if you would, for instance, have a large area and you would want to know what the effect is of biodiversity on, the effect of fragmentation on biodiversity, then you could say, okay, this is the amount of biodiversity that I find in the entire area. So you just count all the species that are there. Or you can look at the sub-communities and see, okay, how many species are there in a sub-community? And the variation between sub-communities might also have an impact on your meta-community. So that is...
The meta-community is just the community of all the species.
Exactly, yeah. The meta-community is the whole thing that you're looking at, and sub-communities are the smaller parts that are inside the meta-community.
The sub-community is a spatial thing. It's
Yeah.
not like certain species.
No, it's spatial, yeah.
One question. Maybe I'm just not so good at counting like this. you say these subcommunities contain species X, but then I just see two crosses that are in a circle, or how does this, do I read this picture wrong? I mean,
Let's see.
I mean,
I
the
think
rust,
the small circles are the subcommunities. So there's two small circles in the big one, in the top one, and there are three small circles in the slightly smaller circles in the bottom one.
Oh, you're right. This is two. Yeah. You're better at counting than I am. Yeah.
But
Yeah,
then
yeah,
the above one should be only one.
Yeah, exactly. No. This is still two subcommunities.
what is a circle and what is a cross? Maybe that's the first question. Yeah.
Yeah.
As far as I understand it, the crosses are all, well, both circles and crosses are the locations where the species was before
Yeah,
the habitat
exactly.
destruction
Yeah.
happened. And the circles are the ones that are left
Surviving.
over after habitat destruction, and the crosses are the ones that have perished.
Exactly.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
You want to get 3 in a row.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So this is actually subcommunity level. Yeah. Although here there are two circles on top of each other, as you can see. Yeah. So that's also not correct. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, so here the meta community contains the species and, well, both sides, but at the subcommunity level, you might have differences in, in the number of species. So not looking at one species per se. Yeah.
But so just because you're now talking about subcommunity and meta community, within a subcommunity we have population dynamics.
Yeah.
And you have dispersal between subcommunities.
Yes.
But when I then have when I have several small, can there still be dispersal between the sub-communities in two different patches?
And that's the thing that I'm going to now. Exactly. Great. Yeah. So that's actually what I'm looking at. So, well, basically what I'm looking at is the static versus dynamic effects and the spatial skills. So trying to include that all in one model. Just look at in the results, because everyone is just looking at one specific result and not at everything. And what I'm also looking at is the interspecific variation in dispersal capacity. Yeah, so the variation between the species. Well, it's because
Within species.
also with it, yeah, not in this current model, not. But in previous models I have, and that's what I'm going to show you now. So yeah, we know that dispersal capacity has a substantial effect on community dynamics and connectivity, indeed. But also we know that dispersal capacity may change with habitat loss and fragmentation. And this has actually been researched in single species studies. So looking at the intraspecific variation in dispersal. So what has been shown here is that if habitat patches become further apart, then the frequency of long distance dispersals increases. So in this particular paper, in this study, they looked at Arabidopsis rails, so different types of Arabidopsis, which also had a different dispersal capacity. And the no evolution line is when they always use the same subset of these different rails. And in the evolution line, they actually used what is going on previously. So the frequency of these different rails were allowed to change. So if you would have no gaps in between, so you have a continuous environment, then there's not really much a difference between the evolution line and the no evolution line. But if you would increase the gaps between between patches, then you get a huge difference because, well, if you have no evolution, then you can hardly get anywhere. And in the case of evolution, you would get longer distance dispersal than you would have if you wouldn't allow for evolution to evolve, for the species to adapt. So that can happen if you would have.
I mean, I'm always a little bit uncertain about the use of the word evolution.
Mm-hmm.
If you select the fastest moving or the furthest moving lines, then you can come further. That's what it's a selection process.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. This is a selection. Well, it's basically a selection process which shows that evolution could go that way. Yeah.
And this is wind dispersal. What is
this is wind dispersal. Well, actually, it was spray dispersal because you had to spray the plant before the Arabidopsis seeds could be dispersed. Yeah.
So these are, I see 12 times mean dispersal distance. Does that mean, so these are the gaps where the habitat is lost? Or are these the sort of the patches where the habitat persists, because then they would be very small?
No. They would have like these small, what's called, trays, where the plants could grow in, and then they would have like 12 of these small trays that are empty, and then you could get another habitat tray again. I think that's what they did here.
And what is the size of a single tray?
It was about 10 by 20 centimeters. So
Short.
yeah, but it's Arabidopsis. So, and you have to do this a lot in the greenhouse. So it was like this huge setup that took over the entire ETH greenhouse, which was fun to watch, but I'm really happy that I didn't have to do it. Yeah. So there's also another study about adaptation in dispersal due to fragmentation, which was done in France. And they looked at the urban populations, which are highly fragmented because, well, there's barely any places where these plants could grow. It's Crepus sancta, so it's like a small weed. And they would compare the proportion of non-dispersing seeds. So you could make dispersing seeds and non-dispersing seeds. And this proportion of non-dispersing seeds in these populations compared to the ones in unfragmented populations. And what they saw here, that is, once the populations get very fragmented in the urban sites, you get more of these non-dispersing seeds on a plant. Yeah.
Which, isn't that just contradicting the previous result?
Exactly.
Okay.
Which is this figure. So we know that if you would have a small distance between habitat patches, you get increasing dispersal capacity, which was the first one. Now, if you would have a very large distance between habitat patches, the seeds cannot reach the other patches. So it's better to just stay in your own little habitat patch and disperse locally. So that's what is going on here. So if there's too much distance there, then you get loss of dispersal capacity. But we don't know actually what is going on in between. So it's unknown what happens there. So you could get like a gradual loss and a gradual gain again of dispersal with increasing or decreasing distance between patches. Or you could have, for instance, an abrupt loss of dispersal capacity when these inter-patch distances become too large. And then you could get a hysteresis effect where you need more restoration to regain dispersal capacity. So what I was looking at with a previous model is to look at whether this hysteresis effect could actually occur theoretically. So what I did was I made a model of adaptive selection in a water-dispersed plant. So in that study that I showed with the students going out into the river, we found out that actually larger seeds disperse further. And so we used that relation between seed size and seed dispersal length to use as the trait that would be evolving. So if you would have a certain seed size and you can have a mutation being either larger or smaller than that seed size, this also affects your dispersal distance. And given the environment, so you can have like the large interpatch distances or small interpatch distances, given that certain environment, you have differences in fitness between the plants that make different seed sizes. And if you iterate this until it becomes a stable population, then this is what you get. So we used all kinds of different parameter values. This is just a subset of something that I'm not going to explain, but this is the median dispersal distance that evolved in the model. And this is the interpatch distance that where it evolved. So these lines, it's not dashed, but the solid, thanks. The solid lines indicate what happens when you go into increasing interpatch distances. And the dashed lines are the ones that show what happens when you would decrease interpatch distance. So what is going on here is there is actually a hysteresis zone here, which can be either small or large depending on the parameters that you use. But we did find out that it could happen. Now we just need to go into the actual nature to find out if it actually happens. Okay, but now, well, we know that dispersal may change with habitat loss and fragmentation. So in a community, does species composition also change because of these differences in dispersal capacity? So that is something that I wanted to put into the model as well. So going back to the actual research question is what are the effects of the spatial configuration of habitat destruction, biodiversity, connectivity, and community dynamics? I made a model that also incorporated intraspecific variation in dispersal capacity, and where I looked at the static and the dynamic effects and at different spatial scales. So in this model, I arranged the habitat destruction from very clustered to highly random. And we had a few hypotheses. So the first hypothesis that while random habitat destruction may result in a smaller immediate species loss at the landscape scale, it will actually result in a steeper decline in species numbers with increasing habitat loss. Well, compared to fractal clustered habitat destruction after subcommunities have stabilized. So that is the dynamic effect will be different from the static effects. And also that species composition changes with habitat loss. So from long distance dispersers being more common when the habitat is just without habitat loss, to locally dispersing species when habitat loss and fragmentation increase. So, and this change in species composition may also impact community dynamics, connectivity, and biodiversity loss. So we created a spatially semi-explicit individual-based model. And the model contains 400 cells, so 20 by 20, and has continuous boundaries. Each cell can contain a subcommunity, and each subcommunity consists of 1,000 individuals. And these individuals can be of different species. And initially they were of different species, but then I let the model run for, I think, 10,000 iterations to find out a stable pattern there. So the model is near neutral. Species may only differ from one another in their capacity to disperse. And the dispersal probability was modeled, well, as a two-dimensional exponential distribution, where this lambda is actually the scaling exponent that decides whether the dispersal capacity of the species. And in each time step, individuals can be replaced by seeds dispersed to that cell from inside of the subcommunity or from outside of the subcommunity.
So are the species interacting? Or
They're only interacting because they are being replaced by, they are randomly replaced by species that disperse into your subcommunity.
So randomly, but so basically.
Weight random.
Yeah, no. So what I mean is like individuals can be replaced by dispersing seeds from inside and outside the communities, but what's the time scale of individuals staying there actually?
That's quite short here because I wanted to speed it up. So every iteration, every step of the model, all individuals can replace something else. So they disperse somewhere, and hopefully this is a subcommunity that exists, and there they randomly replace another individual, or they disperse to, well, just somewhere in between habitat patches, and then they just die. Yeah.
So you get a relatively high loss of species simply due to demographic processes.
Yes. Yeah. That's just to speed everything up. Yeah.
But so there is no ODE dynamics modeling some resources or
No,
just
not at all.
just,
Yeah.
Is that doesn't matter, or so that doesn't matter?
Probably it matters, but then I would still I don't have 10 years to let the model run. Yeah. No, that's why we decided on a near neutral model. So if all species behave the same way, also, nutrient wise, then it doesn't really matter which species replaces what other species. The only thing that differs between them is the dispersal capacity. Yeah. But it would be very nice to expand upon the model, of course, but I only have 2 years left, so that would be difficult. Yeah.
May I say this is species in general, but this is about plants, right? It's blowing around. It's for animals who can move by themselves. This would be very, very different story.
Yes, definitely. And also seed dispersal by animals. If you would include that, that would also be really nice. But that's also steps for the future, which is my last slide. But yeah.
Can you go back to your probability description?
This one?
Yeah. So I don't see yet where, so if I want to have some dynamics in populations, I need some replication step. I don't see anywhere in your description yet where you can actually replicate yourself. I only see reshuffling in this description.
Yeah.
Reshuffling of individuals.
Mm-hmm.
So you're talking about habitat loss and species extinction. So you want to have somewhere a step where there is indeed disappearance of individuals and maybe replication of others.
Yeah. Well, so that you can replicate because you cannot be randomly selected by others to be replaced. So it is possible to be there for more iterations.
Okay. But you increase in size, that's what I don't understand. Like, you can replicate, like you can, there's a birth rate somewhere in this model.
No, the birth rate is for everyone the same. So it's all one.
Everyone on average, but they can be selected either 0 times or 1 or 2 or 3. It's a bit like that.
So
so it's a kind of photo model in the sense that I am here, but and I'm white, but I can turn black because from my neighboring community somebody replaces me.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But then
But there's no growth of voters.
So the parents stay the same.
Right.
So that's where you double yourself.
Yeah, so species can be like they can get more frequent. So, but of course, so every sub-community that still exists still always has 1,000 individuals in there.
So, and what is the probability that you stay the same?
Good question.
That you don't get selected, because you know that you should.
I didn't measure that, but I think that will be different in the different environments.
That's something you set as a parameter.
Yeah, it should be a parameter there.
No, it's not a parameter.
So you have this grid, and in each grid you have all these individuals, and in each time step you have to decide which of these individuals is going to disperse.
Everyone disperses.
Everyone
disperses always. It's just the chance that you are randomly selected to be replaced. That is something that changes. So if you would be like in a single sub-community that is far away from everyone else, there are only 1,000 individuals, and then these 1,000 individuals, they're all far dispersers, and so they almost always disperse outside. Then your chance is highest that you would not be replaced, so that you could stay there. But on the other hand, if you would be in a sub-community that is completely surrounded by other sub-communities, and all these other individuals also disperse on a long distance, except for those in your sub-community, they disperse only locally, then your chance is very high that you get replaced. So it's actually, that's emerging in the...
And how do you resolve conflict? Because you know, two things might end up at the same place.
Well, that's random.
Exceed your 1,000 individuals.
Yeah. Now, if there are multiple individuals ending up at the same place, then it's just a random chance of selecting which one will be the one that stays there. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, let's see. No, we still have this one. Oh yeah, so habitat destruction is modeled using 3 spatial configurations. So the clustered, fractal, and random habitat destruction. And with 20 different levels of habitat loss. So here we show from 10 to 90, but it's actually from 0 to 95% habitat loss. And we simulated only one type of habitat. And other than habitat loss, there was no spatial heterogeneity in environmental conditions. Yeah, and we...
Sorry, is fractal just a name here, or?
That's just a name here, yeah. Yeah, it sounds nice, right? And it also has a bit of a fractal...
I don't see it yet.
Yeah.
I don't see it.
No, in ecology, often these types of patterns are referred to as fractal. Yeah.
Non-fractionalized, but not, it's more for fractionalized, not really fractal.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Actually, you make it using a fractal pattern. Anyway.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
In the third line, you sample randomly, and in the middle, you sample in a fractal distribution. That's what you mean?
No. I have to get over to see how.
You have some correlation. In the middle, you have some correlation between patches that you remove.
Right, but it's inspired.
It's inspired on fractal-like patterns, but it's actually not fractal.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, one question here.
Yeah.
Are green patches the ones that stay, right? Yeah. So.
Yeah.
So, is the lowest configuration of green patches is that a subset of the one above it? Is that always so? So you just so the reduction or the habitat loss is incremental.
In this picture, yes, but in the model, no.
Okay, so you cannot really, so you might actually, for different levels of habitat loss, you might have different configurations.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah, okay, so we also run 2 types of model simulation. So one in which all species have the same dispersal capacity, and one in which the species have different dispersal capacities. Okay, so for the results, I will be discussing these 4 topics. So the species area relation, the average number of species, the connectivity, and the maximum entropy theory of ecology fits to the species abundance distribution. Okay, so these species area have a long history, and well, dating all back to Watson in 1895. And what it actually shows that on a log-log scale, the area size and the number of species are in a positive relation in there, a linear relation. Yeah, so one of the main reasons that is mentioned for this relation is that with increasing spatial scale, a larger number of ecosystems is encompassed. So this is also why some people are convinced that small areas are better than a single large one. Well, in my model, we don't have different ecosystems, but anyway, we're going to fit it. Yeah, and this relation is currently used to estimate how many species would be lost after the amount of habitable area is reduced. And this method is called the backward SAR, so the backward species area relationship. Or, yeah, it's just if you would have a certain amount of species and certain area size, if you would decrease the area size, how many species would you still have left, or would you lose if you would look at the upper side there? So, and often this species richness in recently fragmented patches is actually higher than that predicted by the backward SAR. And the reason for this surplus is that some species cannot survive in such small habitat areas and will go locally extinct eventually, given time. And so this is called the extinction depth. So we can now look at the results of our model simulations. So we ran the model with these species having the same dispersal capacity and with different dispersal capacities. And well, we had the clustered, fractal, and random environments, and the black line will show the backward SAR, and also look at the static and the dynamic effects. So in case of the static effect, so immediate species loss, when all species disperse in a similar way, then all of these lines fall on top of each other. It even looks like this, if you would have random habitat destruction, so high fragmentation, then there would be even a few more species left in the end than in all the other cases, if you would reduce the area size. But if you would have species having different dispersal capacities, then it's becoming even clearer that there's a wider range here. So less species loss here immediately after habitat loss when you have random habitat destruction.
Maybe I'm not understanding what these pictures mean, but you say that right is better than left, but left clearly has a higher number of species.
Yes. Yeah, I'm not saying that it's better. I'm just saying that you can see the difference better between the different environments.
But you also start with different numbers of species.
Yeah.
So
No. You have to actually read it from right to left. So you start with an area size that is like the 400 cells, and then you decrease the area size. You have habitat loss, and then you would look at how many species are still there.
But you start with about 100 species at the right hand side.
Yeah, you start here with 1,000 species because, well, these are, this is a neutral model. Here, all species can stay there. In the different dispersal model, all these species have different dispersal capacities, and so the ones that are really unfit, they are already excluded from.
You let the model run for 10,000 generations or something like that before you start destroying the habitat.
Yeah.
And during those 10,000 generations, already 200 species have gone extinct in the right-hand side.
Yeah.
Let's say 50 species have gone extinct in the left-hand side.
Yeah, because for the same dispersal model, I chose the dispersal capacity that actually came out of this one as being the most adapted.
Could you, sorry, because I don't know the SAR stuff. So how exactly what is the backwards SAR line here? Like,
that's the black one.
Yeah, I know
it means black, that. What is how do you? So if you would only have the completely full environment, and you would there just lose the area size, if you would make the area size smaller, then this is what you have left. But you don't get the clustered factor or random environments. It's just that
it's a gradual change.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
But it still need to fit that backward SAR curve in some sense, or
you have to have that curve.
Yeah.
And how do you get that curve?
You get that curve by just like if this would be the environment, you just start with an area size of 1 and then 2 and then 3 and just go. Yeah.
You could put that thing forward and then use it backwards.
Yeah. Exactly.
And the distinction between static and dynamic.
It's coming.
That's the next.
That's the next one. So static is immediate species loss. Dynamic is species loss after you have all these the ecosystem dynamics in there.
After you reach the new equilibrium.
Yeah, exactly.
And how long did you run that?
Also 10,000 times.
Also 10,000.
Yeah, because then it was already like for most of those it was already stable for a long time. Yeah. So here we see that this backward SAR line is actually way on top, having many more species in it than for the for the situations where you have these clustered fractal random environments. So what it actually shows is that this backward species area relationship is not a good predictor for species loss if you look at dynamic effects.
But still, these three options, these clusters, fractal, and random, are quite close to each other, or?
Yeah, they are. Yeah, and it's even funny that in the end, they get together again. Because I predicted that the random one would be way lower. But
it's surprising to you, but the answer is yes.
Yeah, it was surprising to me because I predicted that this one would be lower.
But then your message is like, who cares how the?
Yeah, at the moment, yes. Yeah. So if you would only look at static, then you would say, okay, then a random destruction would result in less species loss. But if you would include dynamic effects, then there is actually no effect if the area size that is left over is very small. But in between, you do get these differences. So if you would only have a smaller habitat loss, then it would make sense to do either one or the other. So then the random destruction of habitat would result in a lower species loss than for the other two.
Higher.
Lower.
The blue is
higher. Yeah,
yeah.
Getting confused now.
So how do you decide when the whole dynamic has played out? When is the end point?
this is the endpoint.
Yeah, but
but if
you choose that
Yeah.
sort of like randomly.
Exactly. Yeah. Because otherwise, you never know what the endpoint is.
But if you plot it over time,
Yeah.
during those 10,000 generations, does
Mhm.
it stabilize?
Yeah. In the end, it stabilizes a bit. Yeah. But then again, sometimes it's just has hiccups in between. Yeah.
Is the dynamic random, is the endpoint is randomly chosen because you have so much time to run it 10,000 times?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the endpoint. Then.
Yeah. Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
So from the process, I would expect that this is an absorbing process going back to one species.
Yeah.
Yes. But what
in
I
the
forgot to
ultimate-
say
on
is
the
that you
ultimate
also
one.
have like a larger meta community around it, which I did not mention it. But anyway, this larger meta community around the meta community, actually species can also come in into the system from there to stabilize everything. Because indeed,
Oh, so
if you
have
would
an
only,
outside source to this.
Yeah.
To this dynamics.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
otherwise, if you would have like only these 400 patches,
Yeah.
then you always get only one species.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So can I just understand that? So you're introducing new species at some point?
Yeah.
there's just a pool,
Yeah.
an outside pool.
Yeah. You have to include either speciation or species coming in from outside. Otherwise, it won't work. You only get crashes. Yeah, which is no fun. Yeah.
But your statement backward star is not a good predictor for species loss.
Yeah.
Needs some qualification, right? In the context of my model, I would add.
Yeah.
Because you start out with a near neutral species
Mm-hmm.
in an entire in a discrete domain, and then basically what you get is there a random distribution of species.
Yeah.
And so it's a very fine-grained mixture of all species existing at short distances from each other.
Yeah.
Where you start out.
Yeah, in the context of my model didn't fit here, but you're right. Yeah.
So I'm not an ecologist, but is this a good assumption? Like you start with a patch of land, start decreasing the habitat size, and all of a sudden you assume there's species coming from Africa, getting there.
Not from Africa, but from the larger subcommunity. Yeah.
Constant pool of, is that a ecological cycle of life?
Yeah, it is. Actually, the rate in which this happens is actually based on studies that have been performed in Central America. Yeah.
Now this fish from Africa that invade Indonesia, they need to destroy everything.
Now you can imagine that if you have a rainforest and there's a road going in there, and then around that road they start destroying the habitat to make oil palm plantations. But yeah, there's still in the area around it, there's still rainforest that can send migrants into the patches that are left over.
They're crossing the highway.
Yeah. Stuff like that.
Exactly. Okay, so let's move on to the effects that we measured at the subcommunity level. So this was at the meta community level, of course, and this is subcommunity level. So here we looked at the average number of species per subcommunity for each percentage of habitat loss. So meaning that 0 is completely full environment and the 100 is no habitats whatsoever. This is the same dispersal results, and these with species having different dispersal capacities. And again, the colors mean the same thing. So the blue one is random. And what you can actually see is there indeed. If you have random habitat destruction, then the number of species goes down much faster than in case of fractal and clustered destruction of habitats. And then the community connectivity. So what we did, we measured the average percentage of ancestors from elsewhere. So we looked over 50 generations where the ancestor was coming from compared to where you are. And if this is just showing if they are not from the same subcommunity. So in the case of same dispersal, actually a lot comes from outside of your subcommunity. So there's a large mixture of species in subcommunities. The dynamics are very high there, and there's a lot of community connectivity going on there. Only just in these last cases where you have a lot of habitat loss, it goes down. But that's just so basically because you really can't get anywhere. If you're in case of different dispersal, then you would see like this immediate drop off if you would have random habitat destruction. And this, of course, is related to the average dispersal capacity of the species that are in the communities. So, yeah, in the case of, again, there is random destruction of habitat, then the average dispersal capacity also is lower than in the other cases. Okay, so we also...
Can you go back to that one?
Yeah, sure.
I interpret a high value for an average dispersal capacity as that you can disperse far away.
Yeah, that's true.
So if I just take a little bit away of the habitat and I lose all the far dispersing species.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because those have the highest risk of getting right into those traps. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I was also surprised by it, but yeah.
So in the context of your model, it makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, so in the context of our model,
because there's no open area. There is no open area created. So usually
no, exactly. There are no. You cannot colonize.
In the population communities, there is the idea that we actually have that they exist because of a balance between extinction and invasion.
Yeah. But
you don't implement extinction, so there is no open space. And there is no turnover of individuals in that sense. So that's why you lose the far dispersing species.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is actually very surprising.
So this is again the equilibrium situation, right?
It is. Yeah.
Is these dots the number of simulations you did, or it just to illustrate that?
No, so I did these 20 different habitat loss levels. So that is why you have these dots. And the lines that are like this are actually I think it's the standard error. It will also be the 95% confidence interval. One or the other, but it's actually very small.
Okay,
yeah.
So what triggered my question? Whether then in the very beginning, because if the habitat loss is very small, I would also expect intuitively that the high dispersal capacity will just jump to another area. So where this very small gap that drops really fast, if you would simulate with more fine graining, you will also see some first oscillation and then the drop.
Yeah. If you have zero habitat destruction, then the mortality of dispersers is zero. So, but if you have some habitat loss, then the mortality of dispersers is always higher than zero. And therefore dispersers have a lower fitness, so to say, than the non-dispersers.
Yeah.
So there's, no matter what the level of loss is, there's always a high penalty against migration, because if you don't migrate, you stay in a patch that is suitable for, well, for the next 10,000 years. And if you do migrate, there's always a possibility of dying. And yeah,
That possibility is
it's
there
always
anyway.
nicer
Yeah.
not to die.
But you can
may-
still be
you may
replaced. Yeah.
Wait a second.
Yeah.
You may be replaced.
Yeah.
Because I'm still.
Everyone
not
may
I'm
be
not
replaced,
entirely
yeah.
sure, but parents, you say like individuals disperse, but is it that the parent stays the same and sends out the disperser?
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's where that's where you have a fitness benefit.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think of
But
You
is
can
it-
also be you can also send out a seed to the same patch and
Yeah.
have the seed replace one of the other individuals there.
or it can
Yeah,
also
but then-
replace
but then I
yourself.
don't- But I don't understand why they have less fitness. I don't understand. If they can send a lot of seeds and replace the others, why is that?
Everyone sends equal numbers of seeds,
Yeah,
so only
so,
one
ah.
per iteration.
But
Yeah.
then what's the big dispersers? What is that then? Isn't because they send more seeds?
No, the distribution of where to send the
It's
seeds
further.
is
okay,
further.
sorry,
Yeah.
sorry.
So you're at least
Yeah,
less
yeah.
likely to disperse to your own habitat patch. Yeah.
got it.
Yeah, but I think it would be a different result if you wouldn't allow everyone to disperse. So if you would have first death and then dispersal instead of first dispersal and then death. Yeah. Will be interesting to see what happens there. Then I need a couple of more months. Okay. I don't know if we have time for this because we're already 1 hour.
As long as we're enjoying ourselves, I think.
Are you still enjoying yourselves?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe I should just go over this one then. So I don't know if anyone used to work with maximum entropy theory in ecology. No. No, that's why I think exactly. Yeah, I'm gonna.
This is who really like entropy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So well, besides examining the species area relation, the average number of species per subcommunity, and community connectivity, so we also brought these components together and looked at the relation between these state variables by fitting the species abundance distribution to the prediction of maximum entropy theory in ecology, or MEAT for short. So with MEAT, a large number of different community relations and distributions can be estimated, and often more accurately than by any other method. Yeah, I won't go into this further, but there's a lot of nice videos on YouTube that were made by Santa Fe Institute. That's very well explained maximum entropy theory in ecology. And of course, some great papers that you can read. But what we are looking at is this one, so the distribution of species abundances. So what you actually do is you have you count all the individuals in species, and then you make a rank of it. So the number 1 is the species that is most abundant, and on the y-axis you put the abundance, so which is in a log form here. And this MEAT actually fits really nice to this relation between the abundance and the rank. If the system is undisturbed and steady state. But for disturbed systems like this one, the MEAT estimations deviate from the observed distributions. And as MEAT estimates deviate more in more disturbed systems, we can also use this deviation as a measure of ecosystem disturbance.
Disturbed here means
Disturbed here means that the system, well, that a lot of things have been going on. For instance, the soil can be damaged, or there can be a lot of logging going on. It's real data.
This is okay. This is not your model. This is
No.
okay.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah, no, this is just data from, I think from Newman. Yeah, the other one is from Hart.
So that makes sense
Yeah.
that you only see this
Yeah.
species abundance curve in the.
But this is actually what they studied.
What is meant by abundance here? It's just the number of
individuals.
Yeah.
But at the left-hand side, you have actually the log of the abundance against the rank. On at the right-hand side, you have the abundance against the log rank.
Yeah. Exactly. So.
Okay.
Whatever makes the best picture.
Whatever makes a straight line.
Exactly. Yeah. I didn't choose those.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not my data. Too bad. Yeah. So basically, we calculated the fit of the meat estimation to the species abundance distribution, using just the goodness of fit. So, well, you all know goodness of fit of 1 indicates a perfect fit of the meat and estimation on the data. So, going back, or
is the expected number of individuals rank I? So where do you get your expected number from? What's your
that's from the
expectation?
meat. The observed is the actual data that comes out of the model, and the expected is what meat would tell you that it would be.
And you know then.
So that's this difference.
Yeah, but you know the slope.
Yeah. So you have the observed ones, the observed data points, and then you have like the blue line. So you have also here the data points of what meat is now estimating that it would be, given only the average abundance and the number of species.
So it assumes that there are some rare species that you didn't observe in your experiment, but
Exactly.
if you extrapolate your species abundance curve, then it estimates what the true number or
Yeah. So this is what this meat looks like here, the fit to the species abundance distribution. So in the same dispersal simulations, meat fit stays high over all these different levels of habitat loss and for all spatial configurations. So meaning that they're not that disturbed, I guess. And in the simulation where species differ a lot in the dispersal capacity, we see that the same trends as before. So the fit decreases with increasing habitat loss, and most strongly in the fragmented environments, fragmented landscapes. Okay, so while we all know that habitat loss results in biodiversity loss, well, the role of the spatial configuration of habitat or that of habitat destruction has been often debated. And well, we showed that at the static or landscape scale, immediate biodiversity loss measured at these scales is smallest in case of random habitat destruction. But when you look at dynamic effects, then especially when species have different dispersal capacities, then random habitat destruction actually results in the highest dynamic species loss. So you get these different opposing views here that were in this loss debate. If you would look on the smaller scale, at the sub-community scale, in case of the dynamic effects, then when species have different dispersal capacities, then random destruction results in the highest species loss, the highest reduction in community connectivity, and in the most disturbed subcommunities. So we modeled community dynamics in a landscape, suffering habitat loss with both similar and different dispersal strategies. And our results then show that these differences in dispersal abilities between species is an important aspect that impacts community dynamics and connectivity, at least in this model. So yeah, species have different dispersal abilities, and we should also take this into account when we model ecosystems. Also, connectivity is very species specific, and it depends on dispersal capacity. Right now, I just looked at connectivity of the subcommunities, but it would also be better to look at the connectivity differences between species. And of course, there's a lot of further research that needs to be done. So it would be really nice to include dispersal by animals. I'm at the moment working on habitat restoration. So going back, so decreasing habitat loss, and see how the spatial configuration of habitat restoration will impact biodiversity. It would be nice to include trophic interactions, environmental gradients, and look at multiple ecosystems and environmental conditions. So, thank you.
I guess we already have a lot of questions here, so maybe people a little bit more before we go to Rich. Please, people still want to ask.
Well, I can ask a big question, a big thing, but I want to put my perspective on it because I'm a geneticist, and if I think of this SLOSS debate of the several large or what's it, single large or several small, I always think in terms of genetics, because well, having a big population is obviously better in terms of genetic drift and deleterious alleles than having several small ones. So in your case, I would say, hey, if we got all those small patches, they will definitely go extinct. Because of the genetic lack of genetic diversity.
Yeah, but how small should it be to go extinct, or?
Well, yeah, that depends on the species and the genetics. But there's this famous rule of thumb that they always say, hey, on a small term you should have 50 individuals, and on a longer term you should have at least 500 individuals. In order to have a population sustain itself. And well, in general, individual, which is probably possible in yours, most species will go extinct because, well, they need a mate.
Yeah, in my model they don't.
No.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. Yeah, if you say about future research, one thing that I would personally put is a genetic.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, but actually, so yeah, it's not my research, but it's research done in the group. Well, it's going to be done in the group. So they're going to replant a whole forest and doing that in different types of it's called spatial configurations. And then they're also going to look at what is going on in the soil and in the just community that it will be growing there, but also genetically. They're going to look at differences between the plots. If it goes through.
But actually, generalizing from what Patrick just says, because Patrick talks about a certain process, recombination. You choose a very stark model layout, which I somehow don't immediately connect with kind of an ecological or evolutionary question. So you study that problem of the SLOSS debate in the context of that model, but so the starting point at the ecology I miss a little bit. So like, why do you choose this model setup? Why do you look at variation in dispersal I would say like a very obvious ecological discussion is about the trade-off between local competitiveness and dispersal capacity. So you didn't, I'm just actually curious why you actually choose this particular setup, which with a particular ecological mechanism or something like that. So is this dispersal alone, is that really relevant?
I think so, yeah. Because well, the world is
there's a whole
filled
debate about like local competition versus dispersing, right? Like staying here and making myself strong here versus or moving away.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be more useful to look at this SLOSS debate in that context, so that actually the that there is a trade-off?
Yeah.
Because there is now no trade-off either.
Well, there is a trade-off, but the trade-off is like in a deeper layer of the model. So I did not specifically model it that way, but because all these species have different dispersal capacities, and the subcommunities are composed of different species, you do get differences in the dispersal between subcommunities, and there so you also have a different reproduction rate in the end within different subcommunities. So if you will be in a subcommunity in which all individuals are locally dispersing, it will be better to disperse outside. So you could go into a subcommunity where not where everyone is doing long distance dispersal, but then you of course need to stay there. So you would have to change your capacity in the end.
But there is no trade-off level at the trade-off at the individual level, like that if I am a better disperser, I have less chance to actually reproduce locally.
Yeah, there is. Yeah. That is the whole probability distribution that is going into the model. Yeah.
More, so I'm not an expert, but when I saw your slides, I was ringing the bell for me about percolation. Whether did you think about using percolation models to investigate these dynamics?
And how would I do that?
Because in percolation you have this idea, let's say each vertex is like a habitat and you can destroy, so you just keep deleting, and there is a transition where you have this connectivity, and for specific ways that you do this, you have hysteresis, the first order transition that is continuity, and also there is mood transition. So all the qualitative behavior that you show is illustrated with percolation as well, but just maybe it's too theoretical for.
Yeah, it's too theoretical for me. Sorry. Yeah.
Sorry,
But it sounds really interesting. Yeah.
So I was wondering, so you were talking about this experiment that your group is going to do in this regrowing forest.
Yeah.
But can you also just, turn your model the other way around? Now
that's what I'm also going to do. Yeah.
Okay, but yeah,
that's the next step. But for that, I needed to make all these different landscapes with all these stabilized communities, or not stabilized, because I also want to look over time how much time you have to. After destruction, should you already restore it, because otherwise you lose a lot of species. And that is something that I'm setting up right now. Yeah.
So in general, I was wondering about your group. Do you have people in your group that have experience with this kind of large-scale modeling, how you effectively store these kind of thousands of population at the same time in order to prevent you waiting for 2 years at least?
Yeah.
Do you have these kind of people in your group, or?
Well, I have people in my group who are doing like other studies, but not these individual-based models, no. But at the moment, we only have like a small cluster available for a group, or otherwise we have to ask for extra cluster space at the university. Yeah. And this cluster is just dramatically bad. But
there are no more questions, I will say that thanks speaker again, and we go for lunchtime.